The peace talks were supposed to end today. Ambassador Hyun-woo sat at the long metal table in the center of Nexus Station's main meeting room. The room was huge, with walls that showed the stars outside. Alien delegates filled rows of seats that rose up like stairs around the central table. The air smelled like metal and the strange perfumes that different alien species used. Hyun-woo kept his face calm, but inside he felt sick. Next to him sat Admiral So-min, her military uniform clean and pressed. Her dark eyes watched the alien leaders carefully. On his other side, strategic advisor Tae-young typed notes on his datapad. His fingers moved fast, but his face showed nothing. The three humans looked small compared to the alien delegates around them. The Galactic Council had representatives from dozens of species. Some looked like giant lizards, others like walking trees, and some were just floating balls of light. But they all had one thing in common: they looked at the humans like they were insects. Chancellor Vexathari stood at the main podium. He was tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. His voice was loud and clear as he spoke to the room. Terms are simple, Vexathari said. Humans will give up all weapons immediately. All human colonies outside the Sol system will be given to Council control. Human ships will be destroyed or handed over to us. Hyun-woo felt his jaw tighten. He had heard these demands before, but hearing them again made his anger grow. Furthermore, Vexathari continued, all human military leaders will come to Council worlds for trial. They are guilty of war crimes against peaceful species. Admiral So-min's hand moved slightly toward her sidearm, but she stopped herself. Tae-young kept typing, but Hyun-woo could see the man's knuckles were white. War Marshal Quindal stepped forward. He was a massive creature that looked like a bear mixed with a rhinoceros. His armor was covered in medals and scars. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Humans are the youngest species in the galaxy, Quindal said. You have been at war for only 3 years, but you have caused more damage than any species in history. You use illegal weapons. You attack civilian targets. You refuse to follow the rules of civilized warfare. Hyun-woo wanted to laugh. The Council was talking about civilized warfare? These were the same aliens who had glassed 3 human colonies, without warning. The same ones who had used biological weapons against refugee ships. Your artificial intelligence systems are banned by galactic law, Vexathari added. You will hand over all AI cores for destruction. Your jump drive technology uses dangerous methods that risk tearing holes in space itself. This technology will also be destroyed. The Chancellor held up a datapad. These are our final terms. You have 1 hour to accept them. If you refuse, the war will continue until every human world is under Council control. Hyun-woo looked around the room. Hundreds of alien eyes stared at him. Some looked angry, others looked bored. A few seemed to feel sorry for the humans, but not enough to help them. The truth was, humans were losing the war. At least that's what everyone believed. The Council fleets had pushed human forces back to just a few systems. Earth itself was under blockade. Supply lines were cut. The news reports from human worlds spoke of food shortages and power failures. Admiral So-min leaned close to Hyun-woo and whispered, The reconnaissance ships are in position. Hyun-woo nodded slightly. He stood up slowly, his chair making a small scraping sound against the floor. The room went quiet. Even the translator devices stopped their constant humming. Ambassador Hyun-woo will now respond to the Council's generous terms, Vexathari said. The way he said generous made it clear he thought the humans should be grateful. Hyun-woo walked to the speaking platform in the center of the room. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He looked up at the rows of alien faces watching him. Some were smiling, thinking they had already won. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council, Hyun-woo began, his voice carrying clearly through the room's speakers. I have listened to your terms carefully. He paused and looked directly at Chancellor Vexathari. I have one question before I respond. When you destroyed the colony on Kepler 442b, how many children died in the first wave? Vexathari's blue face darkened. That colony was a military target. The humans there were... It was a farming world, Hyun-woo interrupted. 30,000 families, mostly children and elderly people who couldn't fight. You killed them all in the first hour. Angry. Voices rose from the council delegates. Several stood up, shouting in their alien languages. The translators worked overtime, filling the air with overlapping words of protest and anger. War Marshal Quindal slammed his massive fist on his desk. Humans have no right to question council actions. You are the aggressors in this war. Hyun-woo remained calm. When human refugees tried to surrender at Proxima Station, your ships fired on the medical transports. 800 wounded people died while showing white flags. Lies! Shouted a delegate that looked like a giant spider. Human! Propaganda! Your ships use nerve gas on New Seoul, Hyun-woo continued. The poison is still in the soil. Nothing will grow there for 50 years. Was that also military necessity? Chancellor Vexathari's four arms gestured for quiet. The human delegate will answer our terms now. These complaints change nothing. Humans started this war with their illegal expansion. Hyun-woo smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a predator makes before it strikes. You're right about one thing, he said. This war will end today. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. Admiral So-min and Tae-young stood up at the same time. Around the room, security guards reached for their weapons, but the humans made no threatening moves. I am transmitting a message to all human forces, Hyun-woo said, holding up the device. The message is simple. Negotiations have failed. Enemy contact authorized. The room erupted in confusion. Aliens shouted questions and demands. Security. Forces surrounded the human delegates. But Hyun-woo kept talking. The human delegation formally withdraws from these proceedings, he announced, his voice cutting through the noise. We reject your terms completely. Vexathari's face went from blue to purple. You cannot withdraw. You are defeated. We offer you mercy and you spit on it. Hyun-woo turned to face the Chancellor directly. You have 72 hours to reconsider your position. I suggest you use that time wisely. That's when the alarms started. Red lights flashed throughout the station. Emergency sirens wailed. The computer voice announced in dozens of languages. Unknown contacts detected. All defensive systems activate. This is not a drill. Admiral So-min checked her wrist communicator. Multiple jump signatures throughout the system. Looks like the party is starting early. The alien delegates looked around in panic. Through the room's windows, they could see lights in space. The flashes of ships coming out of hyperspace. Lots of ships. Hyun-woo walked back to the human table and picked up his briefcase. Tae-young gathered his data pads. Admiral So-min straightened. Her uniform jacket. Where do you think you're going? War Marshal Quindal demanded. He stepped in front of the humans, his massive form blocking their path. Hyun-woo looked up at the alien general. Even though Quindal was twice his size, the human showed no fear. We're going home, Hyun-woo said simply. Our shuttle is waiting in Docking Bay 7. Unless you plan to hold official diplomats as prisoners? Quindal's face twisted with rage, but he couldn't argue. Galactic law protected diplomatic missions, even during wartime. As the humans walked toward the exit, Vexathari called after them. This is madness. You cannot win. We have 1,000 ships for every one of yours. Hyun-woo stopped at the doorway and turned back one last time. The smile was gone from his face now. He looked tired, like a man who had carried a heavy burden for too long. Chancellor, he said quietly, you never understood humans at all. We don't fight wars to win. We fight wars to end them. The three humans left the room. Behind them, chaos continued as more alarms joined the first ones. The lights in space grew brighter and more numerous. The Council had just learned their first lesson about humanity. Never assume a desperate enemy is a defeated one. The human command ship Taguchi floated in the empty space between star systems. From the outside, it looked like any other human warship, battered and patched from 3 years of hard fighting. But inside, the ship hummed with activity. Admiral So-min stood in the main command center, watching dozens of screens that showed ship positions throughout the galaxy. Officers worked at their stations, their faces lit by the glow of their displays. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of computers and the whispered reports of the crew. Admiral, all Ghost Fleet commanders are reporting ready, said Captain Jin Ho. He was young for a ship captain, but the war had promoted many young officers quickly. His uniform was neat, but his eyes looked tired. So Min nodded. Time until deadline expires? 67 hours, 14 minutes, replied Lieutenant Commander Yunji from her intelligence station. She was small and looked harmless, but she knew more enemy secrets than anyone in the human fleet. Any response from the Council? So Min asked. Nothing official, Yunji said. But we're picking up a lot of emergency communications. They're very confused about where our ships are coming from. So Min allowed herself a small smile. The confusion was exactly what they had planned for. Gather the senior staff, she ordered. It's time they knew the whole truth. 10 minutes later, the ship's senior officers filled the briefing room. Captain Jin Ho sat next to Commander Dae Hyun, the ship's marine leader. Lieutenant Commander, Yunji had her data pad spread across the table. Strategic Advisor Tae Young, who had returned from the peace talks, sat at the far end. What you're about to hear doesn't leave this room, So Min began. Most of you know parts of the plan, but no one except Ambassador Hyunwoo and myself knows everything. She pressed a button, and the room's main screen showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked council positions. Blue dots showed known human forces. There weren't many blue dots. For 3 years, the council has been winning this war, So Min said. They've pushed us back, destroyed our colonies, and blockaded our worlds. Every news report confirms it. Every battle seems to prove it. Captain Jin Ho frowned. Admiral, respectfully, we've all seen the casualty reports. We've lost a lot of good people. Yes, we have, So Min agreed. And every one of those deaths hurts. But those people didn't die in vain. They died so that billions of others could live free. She pressed another button. The map changed. Suddenly, there were thousands of blue dots scattered throughout the galaxy. The room went silent. Commander Dae Hyun leaned forward in his chair. What am I looking at? The real human fleet, Tae Young answered. 3,417 ships, all hidden in fold space pockets throughout the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Yunji stared at the screen. How is that possible? The shipyards were destroyed in the first year. The ones you knew about were destroyed, So Min corrected. The real shipyards have been in the asteroid belts of uninhabited systems. We've been building ships faster than the Council ever imagined. She changed the display again. Now it showed detailed images of human ships, but these didn't look like the usual human vessels. They were sleeker, more advanced, with weapon systems that looked completely alien. While the Council was fighting our main fleet, So Min continued, our real scientists were studying every piece of Council technology we could get. We reverse-engineered their weapons, improved their engines, and developed countermeasures for everything they have. Captain Jin Ho shook his head slowly. You mean we've been losing on purpose? Not losing, Tae Young said. Sacrificing. Every ship we lost, every battle we retreated from, it was all planned. We needed the Council to think they were winning. We needed them to spread their forces thin, hunting our fleeing ships across the galaxy. Commander Dae Hyun looked angry. My Marines died on Kepler Station thinking they were fighting a hopeless battle. You're telling me it was all fake? Their sacrifice was real, So Min said firmly, and it saved millions of lives. The Council thinks humans are primitive and desperate. They think our technology is crude and our tactics are simple. That belief is now our greatest weapon. She showed them another display. This one showed Council fleet positions from the intelligence reports. Look at how they've deployed, Yunji explained. Their fleets are scattered across 40 systems, chasing phantom human forces. Their main battle groups are thousands of light years apart. They've left their core worlds with minimal defenses because they think we're too weak to threaten them. The Council has been so busy hunting our decoy fleets, Tae Young added. They never noticed our real ships moving into position. Every major Council base, every military shipyard, every supply depot. We have ships within striking distance. Captain Jin Ho studied the display. How long have you been planning this? Since before the war started, So Min admitted. We knew conflict was coming. The Council has a history of destroying or enslaving younger species. We just happened to be their next target. She pressed another button, and the screen showed images of destroyed worlds and enslaved populations. The Mortani civilization was peaceful, she said. They had art and music and poetry. The Council wiped them out completely because they refused to surrender their homeworld. The Gelti were turned into slave workers. The Kexhari were experimented on until they went extinct. The room was quiet again. Everyone stared at the terrible images. The council calls us war criminals, So-Min continued. But look what they've done. Genocide, slavery, biological experimentation. They've committed crimes against entire species. Lieutenant Commander Yunji spoke up. That's why we developed Operation Hongik. It's not just about winning the war, it's about stopping the council from doing this to anyone else. Hongik? Commander Dae-hyun asked. An old Korean principle, Tae-young explained. It means benefit all humanity, but we interpret that broadly. All sentient life. Admiral So-Min changed the display one more time. Now it showed a countdown timer. 67:04:33. In 67 hours, the Council's deadline expires, she said. If they haven't agreed to our terms by then, we begin Phase 0 of Operation Hongik. What are our terms? Captain Jin-ho asked. Complete. Surrender, So-Min said simply. All Council military forces stand down. All enslaved species are freed immediately. Council leadership surrenders for trial on war crimes charges. Commander Dae-hyun whistled low. That's not negotiation. That's demanding total victory. Because we can achieve total victory, Tae-young said. The Council has no idea what's about to hit them. Lieutenant Commander Yunji pulled up her intelligence reports. Our latest reconnaissance shows they're still trying to gather forces to attack Earth. They think the peace talks were our last desperate attempt to avoid complete defeat. Let them think that, So-Min said. Every hour they spend planning to attack our homeworld is another hour our ghost fleet moves into final position. She stood up and walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. You all deserve to know something else. This was never just about survival. Even if we could have made peace with the Council, we couldn't let them continue enslaving other species. Captain Jin-ho frowned. You mean we chose this war? We chose to end it properly, So-Min corrected. The Council would have eventually attacked us anyway. At least this way we do it on our terms, with our full strength, and we save every species they would have destroyed in the future. Commander Dae-hyun stood up too. What happens when the countdown reaches 0? The galaxy changes forever, Tae-young said. The Council learns that humanity doesn't just fight to survive, we fight to protect the innocent, even when they're not our own species. Admiral So-Min turned back to her officers. Are there any questions? Lieutenant Commander Yunji raised her hand. What if the Council does surrender? What then? Then we prove that humans can be merciful in victory, So-Min replied. We'll disarm their military, but we won't destroy their worlds. We'll free their slaves, but we won't enslave their people. We'll try their war criminals, but under fair laws. And if they don't surrender? Captain Jin-ho asked. So-Min's expression hardened. Then we show them why underestimating humanity is the last mistake they'll ever make. The meeting ended and the officers returned to their duties. But throughout the ship, word spread quietly among the crew. The war they thought they were losing was actually a war they had already won. The question now was how much the Council would suffer before they realized it. In his small cabin, Captain Jin-ho stared out at the stars and thought about all the friends he had lost in the hopeless battles of the past 3 years. Their sacrifice had bought time for this moment. Soon, the galaxy would know that humans had never been the desperate underdogs they pretended to be. The countdown continued. 664712. Chancellor Vexithari stood in the Council's main command center on their homeworld of Nexus Prime. The room was huge, with dozens of screens showing star maps, fleet positions, and communication channels. Alien officers from many species worked at their stations, but today they all looked worried. Report! Vexithari demanded, his forearms gesturing impatiently. Fleet Admiral Morgex stepped forward. He was a tall, thin creature with gray skin and large black eyes. His voice was high and nervous. Chancellor, we have unusual readings from 17 different systems. What kind of readings? Jump signatures, sir. Lots of them. Ships coming out of hyperspace where no ships should be. War Marshal Quindal stomped over to the main display. His heavy armor clanked with each step. Show me, he growled. The screen changed to show the Kepler system. Red dots appeared suddenly, dozens of them, surrounding the Council's mining stations. "Human ships?" Vexithari asked. "We think so," Morgex replied. "But our sensors can't get clear readings. They're using some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before." Defense Coordinator Kilthara joined them. She was a spider-like alien with 8 legs and glowing green eyes. "This is happening in systems across the galaxy. Our forces are reporting the same thing everywhere." Vexithari felt his stomach tighten. "How many ships?" "We don't know exactly," Kilthara admitted. "Hundreds, maybe thousands. They appear, scan our positions, then disappear again." "Impossible," Quindal said. "Our intelligence says humans have less than 200 ships left. Most of their fleet was destroyed at the Battle of Wolf 359. Morgex looked uncomfortable. "Sir, what if our intelligence was wrong?" Before anyone could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the command center. Red lights flashed, and the main screen showed incoming priority messages from across the galaxy. "Admiral Morgex," called a young officer from his communication station. "Emergency transmission from the Third Fleet." "Put it through," Morgex ordered. The screen showed Admiral Kexval, commander of the Third Fleet. His reptilian face was covered in sweat, and explosions lit up the space behind him. "Command, this is Admiral Kexval. We're under attack by human forces at the Rigel shipyards. They came out of nowhere. Our ships, they're not fighting like humans." The transmission cut to static. "Get me Fleet Commander Veltox at the 7th. "Fleet," Quindal ordered. Another screen lit up, showing a bird-like alien with bright feathers. "War Marshal! The humans just destroyed our supply depot at Centauri. Their weapons! I've never seen anything like them. They tore through our shields like they weren't even there." That transmission also ended in static. "This is impossible," Vexithari said, but his voice was weak. "Humans don't have this kind of technology." Kilthara was reading reports on her datapad. "Chancellor, I'm getting similar reports from 14 different battle sites. Human ships are attacking our installations across the galaxy simultaneously." "But how?" Morgex asked. "Our scouts have been watching human space for months. There was no massive fleet movement." A new voice spoke up from across the room. "Maybe because they didn't move a massive fleet." Everyone turned to see Ambassador Telwara approaching. She was one of the few surviving Mortani, a species the Council had nearly wiped out early in the war. Her people had looked like tall, graceful humans, with silver skin and large, sad eyes. "What are you doing here?" Vexthari demanded. "You have no authority in this command center." "I represent the Neutral Species Coalition," Telwara replied, calmly. "We've been monitoring the situation." "What do you mean they didn't move a massive fleet?" Kilthara asked. Telwara walked to the main display and touched several controls. "May I?" Quindal nodded grudgingly. The display changed to show something none of them had expected. Recordings of human ships, but not the crude, battered vessels they had been fighting for 3 years. These ships were sleek and advanced with systems that looked more sophisticated than anything the Council had. "Where did you get these recordings?" Morgex asked. "From our hidden observation posts," Telwara said. "The ones your people never found because you assumed we were all dead." She touched more controls, and the recordings showed dozens of these advanced human ships emerging from what looked like empty space. "Fold space storage," she explained. "A technology we thought was impossible. The humans have been hiding ships in dimensional pockets, probably for years." Vexthari stared at the screen. "You're saying the entire war was a deception," Telwara finished. "While you were celebrating victories against their main fleet, they were building and hiding their real forces." Alarms blared again, and more emergency reports flooded in. The Council's forces across the galaxy were under attack by ships that shouldn't exist, using weapons that should be impossible. "Sir," called another communication officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the humans. It's being broadcast on all frequencies." "Put it on screen," Vexithari ordered. The display showed Intelligence Officer Ayunji sitting in what looked like a human ship's communication center. She was small and young, but her voice was clear and confident. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began. "For 3 years, the Galactic Council has told you that humanity is a savage, primitive species that threatens galactic peace. Today, you will learn the truth. The transmission switched to recordings. Council ships destroying civilian targets. Council forces using biological weapons against refugees. Council experiments on captured aliens. These are the actions of your leaders, Yunji continued. While telling you that humans commit war crimes, they have been committing genocide against peaceful species. Vexathari felt sick. How did they get those recordings? Some of them are from our own security systems, Kilthara said quietly. They've been hacking our networks for years. The human transmission continued. The Mortani people were artists and poets. The council destroyed their entire civilization because they refused to surrender their homeworld for mining. The Gelti were turned into slave labor. The Kexhari were used for biological experiments until they went extinct. Now the transmission showed the current attacks on council positions. Human ships moved with precision, targeting only military installations and carefully avoiding civilian areas. Today, humanity begins Operation Hongik, Yunji announced. We will free every enslaved species, stop every act of genocide, and bring the council's war criminals to justice. This is not revenge. This is justice. The transmission ended. The command center was silent for a long moment. Then communications started pouring in from across the galaxy. Not from military commanders, but from civilian governments. Chancellor, said the communication officer, his voice shaking, the Altarian government is demanding an immediate explanation. The Veltaran Assembly is calling for an emergency session. The Zephyrian colonies are declaring independence from the Council. More reports followed. The Kepler mining colonies had surrendered to human forces without a fight after the slaves there were freed. The Rigel shipyards were captured intact, with most of the workers joining the human side. The Centauri supply depot was destroyed, but all personnel were evacuated safely first. They're not trying to conquer us, Morgex said slowly. They're trying to liberate the galaxy. Don't be ridiculous, Quindal snapped. This is just propaganda. But, even as he spoke, more reports came in. Human forces were freeing slave camps, providing medical aid to injured civilians, and broadcasting evidence of council crimes on every communication channel. Ambassador Telwara watched the chaos with sad eyes. You never understood what you were fighting, she said to the council leaders. You thought you were conquering a primitive species. Instead, you awakened humanity's sense of justice. What do you mean? Vexathari asked. Humans don't just fight. For themselves, Telwara explained. When they learned what the council was doing to other species, they decided to stop it. This war was never about human survival. It was about stopping council tyranny. Kilthara was reading more reports. Chancellor, our own member species are turning against us. The Veltarans have formally accused us of war crimes. 6 colonial governments have joined them. This is madness, Quindal roared. We are the lawful government of the galaxy, built on slavery and genocide, Telwara said quietly. Another priority message came through. This time, it was from Admiral Somin herself, speaking from the bridge of a human ship. Chancellor Vexathari, she said, her voice calm but firm. You have been shown the evidence of your crimes. Your forces are defeated. Your member species are abandoning you. You have one choice left. Surrender now and face justice under Galactic law. Continue fighting and face the full force of humanity's anger. The transmission cut off. Vexathari looked around the command center. His officers stared at him, waiting for orders. But what orders could he give? The galaxy was falling apart around them, and it was all happening because they had underestimated a species they thought was weak. How long until their deadline expires? He asked quietly. 43 hours, Morgex replied. Vexathari closed his eyes. In 3 days, the council had gone from certain victory to complete collapse. And it was all because they had never truly understood what they were fighting against. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were defending everyone. Operation Hongik began exactly 72 hours after the humans left the peace talks. Across the galaxy, human ships dropped out of fold space and struck at council positions with perfect timing. Admiral So-Min watched from the bridge of the Taguki as her fleet commanders reported in. The main screen showed a tactical display of the entire galaxy, with green lights marking successful operations. Admiral, called Captain Jin Ho from his position at the communication station. Captain Wanshik reports successful liberation of Kepler 442b. All slave workers are free and receiving medical care. Any resistance? So Min asked. Minimal. Most of the council guards surrendered when they saw our ships. Wanshik says the EIA slaves cheered when they realized they were being rescued. So Min nodded. What about the mining operation? Shut down completely. Wanshik's engineers say they can clean up the environmental damage within 6 months. Strategic advisor Tae Young looked up from his data pad. Admiral, we're receiving reports from 17 different liberation sites. Operation Hongik is proceeding exactly as planned. The main screen switched to show a live feed from Kepler 442b. Captain Wanshik stood in what had been a slave barracks, now converted to a medical facility. Human medics worked alongside freed Gelti prisoners, treating injuries and malnutrition. Admiral, So Min, Wanshik reported, we have 8,000 freed slaves here. Most are Gelti, but there are also Veltarans, Altarians, and even some council species who were captured and enslaved. What's their condition? Better than expected. Sergeant Mi Young's medical team says most will recover fully with proper care. The Gelti elders are asking to speak with human leadership. So Min smiled. Tell them they'll have their chance. Right now, focus on getting everyone healthy and safe. Yes, Admiral. Wanshik out. Tae Young switched the display to show the space battle happening near Nexus 7. Commander Hyo Jin's small squadron was engaged with a full council battle group, 12 human ships against nearly 50 alien vessels. Hyo Jin, status report. So Min called. The screen showed Hyo Jin on her ship's bridge. Explosions lit up the space behind her, but she looked calm. Admiral, we're demonstrating the new quantum torpedoes. Council ships can't adapt to our firing patterns. As they watched, Hyo Jin's ships moved in perfect coordination. Their weapons fired beams of pure energy that seemed to bend space itself. When the beams hit council ships, the alien vessels simply disappeared. What exactly are those weapons doing? Jin Ho asked. Quantum dissolution, Tae Young explained. The torpedoes don't just destroy matter. They temporarily phase it out of normal space-time. The ships aren't really destroyed. They're just elsewhere. Can we bring them back? If we want to. It's reversible, which makes it perfect for capturing enemy vessels without killing the crews. On screen, the last council ship in the battle group flickered and vanished. The space around Nexus 7 was suddenly empty except for Hyo Jin's squadron. Nexus 7 is secured, Hyo Jin reported. We've captured the entire enemy fleet without a single casualty on either side. So Min felt a surge of pride. This was exactly what Operation Hongik was supposed to achieve, total victory without unnecessary killing. Admiral, called Lieutenant Commander Yoonji from her intelligence station. I'm receiving a priority message from Commander Dae Hyun. His mission at the research facility was successful. The screen switched to show Dae Hyun inside what looked like a council laboratory. Human Marines were escorting alien prisoners out of holding cells. Admiral, you need to see this, Dae Hyun said, his voice tight with anger. This facility. They were conducting experiments on sentient beings. The camera followed him through corridors lined with containment cells. In some cells, they found members of species So Min didn't recognize. Aliens who had been captured and used as test subjects. How many survivors? So Min asked. 47 so far. Dr. Mi Kyung is examining them now. Some have been here for years. Dae Hyun's voice was full of disgust. Admiral, they have records of experiments on over 300 different species, including humans. So Min felt her jaw tighten. Secure all the data, every file, every recording, every piece of evidence. Already on it. Yoonji will have everything within the hour. The screen switched again, this time to show Dr. Mi Kyung treating one of the rescued prisoners. The alien looked like a mixture of a dolphin and a bird, with silver skin and large, intelligent eyes. This is Kex Hari, Dr. Mi Kyung reported. We thought they were extinct, but the Council has been keeping survivors for biological research. So Min stared at the screen. How many? Only 12 left. But Admiral, they remember their homeworld. They remember their culture. If we can heal them, they might be able to rebuild their species. Do whatever it takes, So Min ordered. No expense is too great. Tae Young was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. Admiral, The liberation operations are having unexpected effects. Council member species are declaring independence faster than we predicted. How many so far? 19 governments have formally left the Council. 23 more have called emergency sessions to vote on independence. The Altarian Federation just announced they're joining our coalition. So Min nodded. What about Council military responses? Confused and uncoordinated. Their forces are spread too thin to mount effective resistance. Most of their commanders are surrendering rather than fight hopeless battles. The main screen showed a tactical summary of the galaxy. Green areas marked liberated systems, blue areas showed human-controlled space, and red areas indicated remaining Council territory. The red areas were shrinking rapidly. "Admiral," Jinho called, "we're receiving a transmission from Chancellor Vexithari." "Put him through." The screen showed the Council leader sitting in what looked like a bunker. His blue skin was pale, and his forearms shook slightly. "Admiral Somin," Vexithari said, his voice barely controlled, "I demand that you cease these illegal attacks immediately." "There's nothing illegal about liberating slaves and stopping genocide," Somin replied calmly. "You are destroying the galactic government. We are stopping a criminal organization that has committed crimes against dozens of species." Vexithari's face darkened. "If you continue these attacks, we will be forced to use extreme measures." Somin's expression hardened. "What kind of extreme measures?" "Biological weapons, planetary bombardment. We will not let you destroy everything we have built." "Everything you built was built on the bones of murdered species," Somin said. "But go ahead, use biological weapons. Show the galaxy exactly what kind of leaders you really are." The transmission cut off. Tae Young looked worried. "Admiral, do you think he'll actually do it?" "Probably. Desperate people make desperate choices." Somin turned to Yunji. "Are our countermeasures ready?" "Yes, Admiral. If they deploy biological weapons, we can neutralize them within hours. Dr. Meekyung's team has developed antidotes for every known Council bioweapon. And if they target civilian populations, we have medical ships standing by in every system. We can evacuate entire planets if necessary." Somin looked at the tactical display again. The liberation was proceeding faster than even their most optimistic projections, but she knew the hardest part was still coming. "Jinho, get me a channel. To all human forces." "Channel open, Admiral." Somin stood up and faced the main screen. Throughout the galaxy, human ship commanders would be watching her words. "All units, this is Admiral Somin. Operation Hongik has exceeded all expectations. In 18 hours, we have liberated 43 systems and freed over 2 million slaves. 17 species have regained their independence, and the Council's military power is broken." She paused, letting that sink in. "But the Council leadership is desperate. They may resort to weapons of mass destruction. They may target civilians. They may try to destroy what they cannot control. Be ready for anything. Protect the innocent. Save who you can. And remember, we fight not for conquest, but for justice." The channel closed. Tae Young looked at the tactical display. "Admiral, at this rate, the Council will collapse completely within another day. That's what I'm afraid of," Somin said quietly. "A controlled defeat is one thing. A complete collapse could lead to chaos across the galaxy." "What do you mean?" "If the Council government falls too quickly, there will be a power vacuum. Millions of worlds will suddenly have no central authority. Pirates, warlords, and worse could take advantage of the chaos." Jinho frowned. "So what do we do?" Somin looked at the display showing freed slaves receiving medical care, liberated worlds celebrating their independence, and human ships protecting civilian populations. "We do what humans have always done," she said. "We clean up the mess, even if we didn't make it." The liberation continued. But Somin knew that winning the war would be easier than winning the peace that followed. The Council's desperate move came exactly as Admiral Somin had predicted. War Marshal Quindal gave the order himself, his massive form hunched over the communication console in the Council's emergency command bunker. "Deploy the biological weapons," he growled. "Target the refugee camps on Altair 4. If we cannot win this war, we will make the humans pay for starting it." Fleet Admiral Morgex hesitated. "Sir, those camps contain mostly civilians, families with children." "They chose to side with the humans," Quindal replied. Now they face the consequences. But as the Council ships moved to carry out the attack, Dr. Mi Kyung was already broadcasting from her medical ship. The transmission went out on all frequencies, showing live footage of Council forces preparing to gas refugee camps. "Citizens of the galaxy," Dr. Mi Kyung said, her voice calm but urgent. "You are watching Council forces prepare to use biological weapons against civilian refugees. These are families who fled their homes to escape the fighting. Children, elderly, wounded, all non-combatants under galactic law." The transmission showed close-up images of the refugee camps, families huddled together, many still wearing bandages from previous Council attacks. Children played in the dirt between makeshift shelters. "The Council leadership claims they fight for galactic peace," Dr. Mi Kyung continued. "This is what their peace looks like." Across the galaxy, civilized species watched in horror as Council ships released clouds of green gas over the refugee camps. The deadly toxin drifted down like fog, and the screaming began almost immediately. But then something unexpected happened. Human medical ships dropped out of hyperspace directly over the camps. They deployed atmospheric cleaners that sucked up the poison gas before it could spread. Medical teams in protective suits rushed down to treat anyone who had been exposed. "The antidote is being administered now," Dr. Mi Kyung reported. "All victims will recover fully. We have been preparing for this exact attack for months." What followed was worse for the Council than any military defeat. Within hours, the Altarian Federation formally declared war on the Council. The Veltaran Assembly voted unanimously to join the human coalition. Even species that had remained neutral began calling for Council leadership to be arrested for war crimes. Chancellor Vexathari watched the reports in his bunker, his forearms trembling with rage and fear. "How did they know?" he demanded. "How did the humans have antidotes ready?" Defense Coordinator Kilthara looked up from her intelligence reports. "Chancellor, I think we need to face the truth. The humans have been preparing for this war much longer than we thought. They've anticipated everything we've done. That's impossible. No species is that good at planning." "Sir," Kilthara said quietly, "maybe that's exactly what we keep getting wrong about humans." The final blow came when the ancient Council dreadnought, Eternal Dominion, made its last stand at Terminus Prime. The massive ship was the size of a small moon, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. War Marshal Quindal commanded it personally, determined to at least take some humans with him. Admiral So Min faced the Eternal Dominion with a much smaller force, only 30 human ships against the Council's most powerful weapon. But she had learned something about the enemy ship that changed everything. "Admiral," reported Captain Sang-Ho from his ship, the Soul's Defender. "Our intelligence was correct. The Dominion is using Mortani children as human shields. They're being held in the ship's outer sections." Somin felt sick. Even in their final moments, the Council couldn't stop committing atrocities. "How many children?" "At least 200. Maybe more. Recommendations?" Captain Sang-Ho's voice was steady, but Somin could hear the determination behind it. "Admiral, my ship has the new phase drive system. I can materialize inside their hull past their shields." "That's a suicide mission, Sang-Ho. The phase drive is still experimental." "Maybe. But those children don't deserve to die because adults started a war." Somin closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about all the decisions that had led to this moment. 3 years of careful planning, thousands of lives lost, and now one more impossible choice. "Approved," she said finally. "But you take volunteers only. No one goes who doesn't choose to." "Understood, Admiral." What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Captain Sang-Ho's ship activated its phase drive and literally materialized inside the Eternal Dominion. The transition was violent. Reality seemed to tear apart and rebuild itself as the Soul's Defender appeared in the enemy ship's main hangar bay. Sang-Ho led the boarding party himself, along with Marines Bo-Ra and Kyung-Soo. They fought through the ship's corridors, not to destroy it, but to reach the hostages. The Council troops they encountered seemed confused and demoralized. Many surrendered without firing a shot. "This way," Bo-Ra called, following her scanner toward the life signs. "The children are in Section 12. They found the Mortani children locked in what looked like cargo containers. The younglings were scared and sick, but alive. Kyung-Soo, who had children of his own back on Earth, knelt down to comfort them while Bora worked to unlock their restraints. "It's okay," he said in the few words of Mortani he knew. "Safe now. Humans here. Safe." But their mission wasn't over. War Marshal Quindal had barricaded himself on the ship's bridge, threatening to destroy the entire vessel rather than surrender. Captain Sang-ho went to face him alone. The bridge was enormous, designed for the Council's largest species. Quindal stood in the center, wearing full battle armor and holding a massive energy weapon. Around him, his bridge crew cowered behind their stations. "Human!" Quindal growled. "You think you have won?" "I think this war is over," Sang-ho replied calmly. "Your children are safe, your crew can surrender and live, but the killing stops now. The Council will never surrender to primitives. The Council is already gone. Your member species have abandoned you. Your fleets are defeated. You're fighting for nothing." Quindal raised his weapon, but something in Sang-ho's voice made him pause. The human wasn't gloating or threatening. He just sounded tired. "Why?" Quindal asked. "Why did you start this war?" "We didn't start it," Sang-ho said. "We just decided to finish it. When we learned what you were doing to other species, we couldn't stand by and watch." "You're aliens! Why do you care about other aliens?" Sang-ho looked at the massive alien with something that might have been pity, because suffering is suffering. It doesn't matter what species feels it. The fight that followed was brief. Quindal was powerful and experienced, but Sang-ho was fighting for something bigger than himself. When it ended, the War Marshal lay unconscious on his own bridge, and the Eternal Dominion surrendered. But the real victory wasn't military. As news of the children's rescue spread, the last Council forces throughout the galaxy began surrendering. Not because they were defeated, but because they finally understood what they had been fighting against. The humans weren't conquerors. They were liberators who risked everything to save children they had never met, of a species that wasn't their own. Admiral So-min received the final surrender report 18 hours later. The galaxy had changed completely in less than a week. The Council was gone, their leaders captured or in hiding. Dozens of species were free for the first time in centuries. "Admiral," Captain Jin-ho reported, "the last Council stronghold at Vega 7 has surrendered. All military operations are complete." So-min nodded, but she didn't feel like celebrating. "Casualties?" "Remarkably light. Total human losses, 47 ships, 312 personnel. Enemy military casualties, less than 2,000. Civilian casualties, 0. And the freed populations? Over 3 million liberated slaves, 43 species restored to independence, 17 extinct species that turned out to have survivors in Council research facilities." So-min looked at the tactical display one last time. The galaxy was green now, free systems, liberated worlds, species governing themselves for the first time in generations. "It's over," she said quietly. But even as she spoke, So-min knew the real work was just beginning. Winning a war was one thing, building a peace that lasted was something else entirely, and that would require something humans were even better at than fighting: hope. 6 months after the war ended, Ambassador Hyun-woo stood in the same room where the peace talks had failed. But Nexus Station looked very different now. The cold metal walls had been replaced with warm materials from dozens of worlds. Art from liberated species decorated the corridors. The air smelled of flowers instead of fear. The old council chamber had been converted into the Galactic Federation Assembly. Instead of rows of seats rising up like a pyramid, the new design put all species on the same level. No one looked down on anyone else. Hyun-woo watched as delegates from 47 different species took their seats. Many wore the simple clothes of farmers and teachers rather than military uniforms. These weren't conquerors or rulers. They were ordinary people chosen by their own kind to represent them. "The tribunal is now in session," announced Judge Kexana, one of the few surviving members of the extinct Kexhari species. She had volunteered to oversee the war crimes trials, saying that justice should come from those who had suffered most. In the defendants section sat former Chancellor Vexithari and 16 other council leaders. They looked smaller now, without their fancy uniforms and military escorts. Vexithari's blue skin had faded to gray, and his 4 arms hung limply at his sides. The charges are genocide, slavery, biological warfare against civilians, and crimes against sapient species, Judge Kexana continued. How do the defendants plead? One by one, the former council leaders stood to answer. Most pleaded guilty, their voices barely whispers. They had seen the evidence. Thousands of hours of recordings, millions of documents, testimony from survivors they thought were dead. War Marshal Quindal was the last to speak. The massive alien struggled to his feet, his armor replaced with simple prisoner clothes. Guilty, he said, his voice like grinding stone. But I want the court to know, we believed we were keeping order in the galaxy. We thought the council way was the only way to prevent chaos. Judge Kexana nodded. Your beliefs are noted, but believing something doesn't make it right. What will happen to us? Vexathari asked. You will serve time in prison, helping to rebuild what you destroyed, the judge replied. The Mortani need their cities rebuilt. The Gelti need their poisoned worlds cleaned. The Kexhari need help recovering their lost history. You will spend your remaining years undoing the harm you caused. It was a mercy none of them deserved. But it was the kind of justice humans had insisted on. Punishment that healed, rather, than destroyed. After the tribunal, Hyun-woo walked through the station's new cultural center. Dr. Mi Kyung had established a medical research facility here, where scientists from dozens of species worked together to develop cures for diseases that affected multiple worlds. Ambassador, called a familiar voice. Hyun-woo turned to see first speaker Telwara approaching. The Mortani leader looked healthier than when they first met. Her silver skin had regained its shine, and her large eyes were bright with hope instead of sadness. First speaker, Hyun-woo replied with a bow. How are your people adjusting? Better than we dared hope, she said. The humans have been extraordinary. Your engineers helped us rebuild our cities. Your doctors treated our sick. Your teachers helped our children remember our history. It was the least we could do. Telwara smiled. No, Ambassador. The least you could do was nothing. What you did was everything. They walked together toward the observation deck, where large windows showed the space around the station. Dozens of ships from different species moved peacefully through the area, trading. Vessels, exploration ships, medical transports. Tell me honestly, Telwara said. Did you always plan for this? The freedom, the Federation, the peace? Hyun-woo considered the question. We planned to stop the Council, yes. But this... He gestured toward the peaceful scene outside. This is what happened when 47 species decided to work together instead of letting someone else rule them. On the deck below them, children from many different species played together. Human children ran alongside young Gelti, while Mortani younglings chased Altarian cubs. A few months ago, most of these species had never seen each other except as enemies or slaves. Admiral Somin wants to see you, Telwara said. She's in the strategy center. Hyun-woo found the Admiral reviewing reports from across the galaxy. She had been promoted to Fleet Admiral of the Federation Defense Force, but she insisted on the same simple uniform she had worn during the war. Admiral, Hyun-woo said, how are the integration efforts going? Better than expected, So-min replied. Former council officers who requested to serve under human command are proving very helpful. They know the galaxy's problems, and they want to fix them. She showed him a holographic display of the galaxy. Green lights marked stable Federation. Worlds, blue lights showed areas still recovering from council rule, and yellow lights indicated regions that needed help. Any red zones? Hyun-woo asked. Red would mean areas still in conflict. None, So-min said with satisfaction. The last pirate group surrendered last week when they realized the Federation actually protects trade routes instead of exploiting them. Strategic Advisor Tae-young approached with a datapad. Admiral Ambassador, I have the final report on Operation Hongik. Go ahead, So-min said. Total casualties, all sides. 3,847 military personnel, 0 civilians. Freed populations. 3.2 million slaves, 47 independent species restored. Extinct species recovered, 17 including the Kexhari, Mortani remnants, and the Velnash, who everyone thought were myths. Tae-young paused. Economic recovery is ahead of schedule. Trade between Federation worlds has increased 300% since the war ended. The former slave worlds are becoming some of the most prosperous in the galaxy. And the former council worlds? Hyunwoo asked. Adjusting well. It turns out most council citizens were just as oppressed as everyone else. When they learned what their leaders had been doing, they voted to join the Federation overwhelmingly. So-min smiled. What about the exploration initiatives? 37 new species have made contact in the past 6 months. All have chosen to join the Federation voluntarily. Captain Wan Shik's deep space mission found an entire cluster of civilizations that had been hiding from the Council for centuries. The door chimed, and Captain Sang-ho entered. He walked with a slight limp, a reminder of his mission aboard the Eternal Dominion, but his eyes were bright. "Captain," So-min said. "How are the children?" "All recovered," Sang-ho reported. "The Mortani younglings have been reunited with their families, but Admiral, they want to name their new school after the Soul's Defender." "That's an honor," Hyunwoo said. "It's more than that," Sang-ho replied. "It's proof that what we did mattered. Those children will grow up free because people were willing to risk everything for strangers." As if summoned by their conversation, the station's communication system activated. "Admiral So-min, please report to Assembly Hall 7. The Galactic Federation Council is ready for the closing ceremony." The 4 humans made their way to the Assembly Hall, where representatives from every Federation world had gathered. The hall was packed with beings of every size, shape, and color imaginable. At the center of the room stood a simple podium. No throne, no elevated platform, just a place where anyone could stand and speak for their people. Ambassador Hyunwoo stepped to the podium first. The hall fell silent. 6 months ago, this station was the center of an empire built on fear and oppression, he began. Today, it's the heart of a federation built on hope and cooperation. Applause filled the hall. Not the polite clapping of formal ceremonies, but the genuine enthusiasm of people celebrating freedom. "The Galactic Council told you that order required submission," Hyunwoo continued. "They said peace could only come through conquest. They were wrong." He paused, looking out at the diverse crowd. "Real peace comes from justice. Real order comes from cooperation. Real strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Now Admiral So-min stepped forward. "The human species didn't seek to replace the Council's tyranny with our own. We fought to ensure that no species would ever again have to choose between freedom and survival." The applause grew louder. Today, 47 species govern themselves, freely. Former slaves are now teachers, farmers, artists, and leaders. Children who were prisoners 6 months ago are now playing together in gardens built on former battlefields. First speaker Telwara joined them at the podium. "The humans taught us something important," she said. "Strength isn't about how much power you have over others. It's about how much you're willing to sacrifice for others." Finally, Judge Kexana spoke for all the species that had been thought extinct. "For generations, our peoples lived in hiding, believing we were the last of our kinds. The Federation didn't just free us. They gave us back our futures." As the ceremony ended, Hyunwoo walked to the observation deck one last time. Outside, he could see ships from dozens of worlds coming and going peacefully. Trade vessels carried goods between former enemies. Research ships explored new frontiers together. Medical ships rushed aid to worlds that needed help. Tae-young joined him at the window. "Do you think it will last?" he asked. "Nothing lasts forever," Hyunwoo replied. "But this has a chance, because it's built on something the Council never understood." "What's that?" Hyunwoo smiled as he watched a human ship dock next to a Mortani vessel, their cruise.